the question, and yeah, I agree 100% with what you say. Those three things that you've mentioned, you know, the because I just think with the prime minister, I do as well. I feel sorry for him. He has a lot on his plate, and you know, when I look at it, and I think he politicizes everything. It's you know, Tulepa said, I don't know what Tulepa said last week. He said, you know, we used to come into Parliament, and then after Parliament, we'll come back and we'll laugh with each other, you know, and that's the spirit. You know, we speak our mind in Parliament, and then we come out and we have a laugh. And so that's what I used to hear as well before that used to happen. But it doesn't seem like it's happening now, for what I can see. It seems to be very personal, and I think it really comes back down to being politicized. The Prime Minister plays his games of being to politicizing everything. You know, for example, you know, the rugby, you know, that blew up in his hand. That was politicized. He claimed that he wasn't being politicized, but he was being politicizing. In this scenario, he was politicizing the rugby scenario. You know, the projects, you know, when they cancelled the Samoa Airways, that's politicized. You know, they didn't have to take out, it's not only Laoli, you know, this is Fiame's government as well at this time. They didn't need to take out the airline. It was all set up. They just needed to pay forward what needed to be paid. But they said, oh, too much money that's going on towards this. Politicized. You know, the people are being politicized now as well. People, oh, who are you with? Are you with the red or are you with the blue? That's politicized. The court case that's in front of the court at the moment, the Sam scenario, it's been politicized. Now you can see Prime Minister claiming, you know, in the sessions he's saying Tulepa is saying, you know, he's part of him. He accused him of this whole scenario, and the court's still going, and it's been politicized. And then, you know, lastly is the big one, which is the Fono Whāwai. It's been politicized. You know, you can't say you can't. It's politicized, guys. Like, you know, I just want people to realize that, because, you know, you can't have all the Fast Party members being able to sign off their constituency and then turn around and then all the HRPP have to be paired with a Fast supporter. That's discrimination, and that's politicized. And he's claiming, oh, I'm not doing anything. And I think because he's playing that game, he's making his own bread by doing this. And there's, you know, a lot of the stuff is blowing up. I don't know if that's what you think, Professor?
Yeah, well, you know, as you were speaking, I was thinking of the boomerang effect. You know that famous, you know, indigenous weapon. You know? So be careful when you play the boomerang game. You know? Because it will come back. You know, whatever, it will come back. You know, so you know, play the politics with the clear conscience that this would benefit Samoa. You know, and then eventually, you know, for those who are the opposition at the moment, and you know, others who you know, do not accept, you know, the policies, you know, will finally admit later on, say yes, that was, you know, but at least the criticism, you know, provided that clear path for them to walk. You know, because you cannot just say yes, 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 without saying no. You know, you have to do this, that's good, you know, and you need that. I remember when Trump was in power too, he received a lot of criticisms, you know, and some he would take on, and some, you know, he would held on, you know, staunchly, like the changing of the, you know, the roads, you know, that's right. That was a big issue, you know, because at the time, you know, we just started a tour with Leala, you know, Palu, and you know, so we were in their position, you know, and you know, for me, being an advisor, you know, controller to the customs controller, you know, at the time, and I knew the impacts of the because the decision was supposed to be activated, quite a while. They should have changed that, but it didn't happen. So Turepa took it to the next level and made it happen. So now everybody, is benefiting from it. So that kind of attitude, and also forward thinking, that you have to stick with it. So coming back to Lauli and his administration, I heard something that he's only in power for 3 months, and now, it seems like he's ready to throw in the towel. So I feel for the prime minister. I feel for him. I think my advice, if he pulls through with the court cases and everything, then he has all the time in 5 years to put in place, what he feels and what he sees is best, because all this time that Turepa is now, I would say standing, he's now dancing elegantly on that stage,
Yeah.
because if it wasn't for that stage, he would have not performed, that dance now, and to the future, and I think we can expect it. But let alone that we should still provide that critique for the government if things go well, but if whatever happens through these court cases, then that's another story. But he has a lot to learn from the stewardship of the country. And as you said, that being political about every debate that you would want to perform, for whatever developments, that's something that you have to be very careful about. Because some of the debate is very obvious, and you can see that, with the Fonopavaya, you can just look at it and say, whatever the argument that comes today, of course we know, but this is all, it's that invisible political hand, that is at the back of it. But hopefully things will work out as expected. But since some of these matters are now with the court, let's see what what the court say.
Professor,
Yep.
I did a video, the video that, because the Turepa last week had mentioned about the fridge, which was a generator or a fridge. There was a video that went out last night, and I was researching a little bit into it, and I truly do feel for the Prime Minister, looking into the story, when I seen that he had, I guess, I'm not sure what he was like at that time, to be boasting or to be saying that he's got a cheaper way of getting the generator and all this stuff. And, I can picture from a perspective, I always try to put myself into the other person's shoes. How do they feel? And, I guess this was an embarrassment in a way for him. He mentioned that his integrity is being questioned, and you know how it is in Samoa, early in Samoa, there's things you bypass and all this stuff, and I don't think it was expected for him to blow up like this. And it did look messy for him, and I felt for him in a way because, maybe his intentions were good to help out, to give a cheaper price for the generator or the whatever it was. But I can see that, fast forward, and he went and created the Fast Party. You can feel the personal, I'm not sure about the history before the Prime Minister with Turepa and HRPP or Lealapule, but you could feel the personal, just me looking into the story, you could feel that there's something personal from this event that took place. Is, you get, you're trying in a good way, but you get, I could feel the personal feeling of emotions that has built up with the Prime Minister at the moment. That's caused from this little event. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, Professor? Because I can feel it
When it comes to integrity matters, It's for any higher office that you hold, whether it's prime minister or any parliamentarian position or any other, government position, including ourselves too. Even the church, even the Matai. Once you have been bestowed with those titles, it comes with responsibility. And that responsibility, first and foremost, is the integrity.
Yeah.
And that integrity has to be, it should be your guiding light, for you. Many a times we make decisions to try and soothe those who are close to us, or sometimes, those who are our enemies. But then at the same time, we have to make sure that it is the right, thing to do. And that's rare to come, because we are humans. We're not angels, we're not God,
right.
but we can seek the strength from the Holy Spirit to make that decision. I know I had a lot of experience in that kind of, when I was the dean for the Faculty of Business and Entrepreneurship, before I went into Parliament. For quite some time I was the dean. So we had a lot of developments in the curriculum and everything. We put in new programs. It was not easy. It was not easy. And at the time, one of my colleagues, we worked together, is now Minister of Revenue, Faunga, so he was one of my colleagues. But in making the decisions, sometimes I couldn't sleep the whole night. I would just lie on the bed and just myself, and God. I seriously seek after, God's wisdom so that I can be able, and also the strength to make the right decisions the following morning. So I felt good, and that's, that is where, we should seek that. And I'm not saying, because we are a Christian country and we have been given, that, I would say that amazing gift, the relationship between God, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And if we seek that diligently, you will definitely get it. Like I know you must have experienced that too, and that's where, when we look into integrity, because that's what integrity is all about, you have to do, you have to go above the highest moral standards, what we have, for us, the humans. You will make a lot of enemies, you will make a lot of enemies if you do the right thing. So given that the situation about that case, I know, I understand, because that time I was not in Parliament, but we were following the case very, very enthusiastically, and those were the results, But like I said, if you go on with that crutch, and then that crutch becomes the cornerstone of your, of your integrity and your policies, you're gonna get a boomerang effect.
Exactly.
You're gonna get, whether you like it or not, you're gonna get it, because these positions are temporary. You're not going to be there. There is no eternity in Parliament.
Yeah.
And any other, even myself too, but it will come back to you. And when that time comes, then you have to seek help, and the help can only come from the mountain. That's what the Psalm says, and the help can only come from God. And I hope Laoli has, the Prime Minister has. I hope he steps aside, from that and pursue the path that will not only, I would say, redeem himself and also the nation as well too, and all of us. And I think it's very important that like in this holy month, we're going through the whole redemption process through the blood, the sacrifice of the Lord. But if we continue to hold on to those, to those crutches, it's bitterness, uh, it's an energy. Remember, when you hold on to that, that anchor that, you want to repay,
Revenge.
That's just part of, there are two energies. One is positive energy, the other one is the negative energy, and they exist. They both exist. And when we look at, that fundamental law of physics, whereby, positive charges rebel. Unlike charges, that means negative and positive, they attract each other. So regardless of whatever we say, there will always be that coexistence between the good and the bad. But I think, what Christ has taught us, only Christ can overcome, bad with good, because we don't have that, unless we become fully, sanctioned through the blood of Christ. And then, other than that, we're just a mere, recipients of the wrath of the devil. So coming back, if you cover those and looking into this and trying to say, forgiveness is one of the greatest virtues Christ has taught us. Other than grace, than forgiveness. Even the last minute, the last second before his soul, departs.
Yeah.
He said, God, please forgive them, because they know not what they are doing. And that's and I hope, I hope with this holy month, our Prime Minister, should also look into that. And spend some time, I know he's a man of prayer. We are all, people of the book, so to speak. And we strive to seek, that genuine relationship with Jesus Christ. But it won't come. It won't come if the Spirit sees that you become like a Pharisee. The story of those. We have the Pharisee who stood in the temple and then he prayed loudly. I've done this, or not the Pharisee. Yes, and they keep the law and everything. So they should be rewarded, for all the blessings and everything. And then we have the tax collector, the teller. The teller just stood away from, just in the corner, just by himself, and then he was patting his chest like this, and then he said, "Oh God, please help me. I am a sinner." It's just him, just remember those. And then when we look at the analysis of the two, the tax collector's offering, was burnt. Was accepted before the throne of grace, because he did it with all his heart. Not with any loud noises. Making sure that others would hear what you say. It was just him and the Holy Spirit. Whereas the Pharisee, it was unfortunate that his prayer was rejected. so the court of grace did not accept. So these are, some of the great examples, and that's why forgiveness is, because Christ is the ultimate. If you read through the seven attributes of God, it's, you just mesmerize, if you look at all those sevens that's in my conclusion. Even, whatever you can do in life, there is no way that you can fulfill one of those 7 attributes of God. So something has to happen. So that's why the plan of Christ. That's why his son made flesh. Like in John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, while among us, and everything was made through Him. So it's important that we, and I think listening. I hardly listen to the parliamentary debate now, but I just picked up on some, and it appears that some of the Faipulas, they would spend half of their parliamentary book, talking about the love of God, and yet they do the other way, other things. So they become like the Pharisee. Yeah. So yes. So integrity is very important, and we, we can let's pray for Laudi too, and his. And for me, I have got nothing, against it. Although whatever happens in the past, that was the past. But we seek that common ground, the forgiveness through the blood of Christ. Because after all, we are, once we leave this temporary life, we will be individually summoned and stand before the throne of grace, and then the book of life will be opened. And then you would be in shock of your life that all of the bad things, all some of the secrets that you kept, would be read out to you. But at that time, it was already too late. So yeah. So that's why I enjoyed our program. At the same time, we're also sharing the spiritual insights. To others as well, through using the English version of our media in that sense. There. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Yes, I too agree. The Bible is so beautiful. I'm not a Bible person. Like that's me. Like I know a lot of the stories through Sunday school and stuff like that, but I'm not a lot of the stories I'm aware of. But that story, that's a nice story. And there's many, many stories that you have in the Bible that the Prime Minister can take from, and it just seems like, yes, we are a Christian country. We should be using this. And yes, you make that point about the politicians. When they get up to talk, they spend a lot of their time on talking other stuff. When we should be talking about stuff that the issues in Samoa. But it is good that we have the Bible to guide us, and I hope Lauli, it's in his hands. If this is what's holding him back, ask for forgiveness. If that's what's hurting him, that's what's driving him. For him to just forgive and ask for forgiveness from the people and also from Tulepa, it would all go away, and Samoa will come back in harmony. But when it comes to, I mentioned it's politicized. That's what I see him doing. Oh no, it's the rugby stuff and the Whānau Whāwai. He's creating the drama, and I'm thinking, where's this coming from? Where's this stemming? And then when I did this video about the generator, I could see, in my heart, I could feel a little bit of Lauli's pain, and because, Professor, we've all gone through our own stuff, and shame in our community is a big thing. That's the honest truth. Shame in our Samoan community, I'm not sure about other communities, but shame in our community is a big thing. And this is why, guys, I know you guys are online on fake pages because of shame. It's, when I look at the spectrum of the emotional spectrum of, joy, love, and all that stuff, what's on the bottom is shame. Shame and guilt is down the bottom of the emotional chart. If you look at your emotion, and down the bottom is shame and guilt. So, these are two emotions that if Lauli is, suffering from that, I hope he can take from the Bible. Not from us, we're not trying to tell him what to do, but just from our little experience. He's got the power all in his hands.
On the, what you have just said, It's very true. It's very true. And I think he really, really needs to abide with genuine grace of forgiveness. Once that is being done to but whatever happened, and HWP and others, and us all, then you will see that he will be blessed, as he moves forward, But if he carries that with him, we know the outcome,
Yeah.
we know that it won't last, because the burden of being bitterness, the anger, it destroys you from inside. And, Christ is very clear on that, But once you let it go, let God let go, Christ will carry that for you, and that's what he said. That all those who are weary and heavy laden, come to me, and I will give you rest. So, it's very important, and, you know, in my early 20s, Mike, this is in my testament, and I hope, this will be good for others too. That was the prime of my life, that was towards the very end of my first class diploma at University of the South Pacific, and at that time being a university student, you just go all the way, you just, whatever money that you can get, you will end up, with the nightclub, clubbing with friends, the girls, and then after that, then you go back to university, you sleep the whole day, and then you do your work, The upbringing that I had through the gospel, because my parents were Methodist ministers. They were blessed to go all the way up to being in the chair, of the city. And I didn't see that, for me, as a young, vibrant, guy, with everything that I had, not just sports only, because I was really gifted through sports, not just rugby and even athletics, and also, excel in academic as well, And then all of a sudden, this was before the Apia Park, the stadium that was still before that, there was an old Apia Park. So we used to come and play, Lamori, that kind of. And after training at USP, I would come and play. And then I was asked by one of the teammates if I could speak with the coach, So I said, what coach? And I thought it was our village in Mota, but it was coach from another village, and she wanted me to, it was a lady, to come and play for them. And I said, no, I'm playing with the university. So this is my final year. But because of that, then I agreed. So I trained at the university, very hard. And without knowing that I've already registered on it. So when they found out, that my name was, they were very disappointed with me. And I only played 3 games in the old Apia Park. And Mike, what happened? I got injured and I broke my neck. So I was tackled very badly. This is, at that time, rugby was very rough. You have to watch out for yourself. Even if you're looking towards your opponent, the other guy would just come from the back and clap you. So we were playing like there were no rules. Otherwise you'll have to fight. And then I used to, to do a lot of fighting. So, after I tackled my opponent, because I was playing in the backline, and I just felt the crack, of my neck, and then I just fell down. And when I tried to move, I couldn't move. It was scary. And then for the first time in my life, growing up in a very, very strong, solid Christian family, My parents were very strict, Methodist nations. You have to be there, during the family evening services, and church. And, things just, led me astray because of the situation that I was at. I was at university and I was also, doing almost everything, not just sports, but also academically. And that really, really let me off, and I thought, oh, I am the man, So it ended up, I broke a lot of hearts too, in terms of, that kind of flirtness with young, the, the girls and that. But anyway, what happened? I snapped and broke my leg. So I couldn't move. And I tried, and I thought, my gosh, and I felt, from, as I was lying, I felt cold. My feet, from, it was cold, it was coming up, and I knew it was death. I hardly talk about this experience, because I, in when I was in Canada, I was invited to, quite a few, and I, gave this testimony, even as far as, what happened to me. So I felt that it was this, and I had no. So for the first time, I thought, that I was going to die, and I just said, "Oh God, this, I want to be my, this is what happened on the field." I just, remember that silent prayer of I want to live, because it was coming, and I knew where I was going to go, I knew exactly where I was going, my upbringing was the church, and what I was doing was completely, the other way around. And I knew I was going to be charged for those. And then the ambulance came in. So the referee who conducted he was a Palang, and I just told him that I think I broke my spine, So they took me inside, and then the ambulance went to Matotua. That was the old hospital. They had 6, and the weekend, all of a sudden, the doctors, and there were no bone specialists, at the time. It was only some specialists from overseas who were working, and they put halo tracks on my head, with about some 60 or 80 pounds, trying to pull my, the dislocation. It's C4 and C5, and that was it. But what I'm telling you, because when that happened, I lost consciousness, at the start. And I had a strange experience, Remember I said my silent prayer, please God, I want to be, because I knew that I was going direct to hell. I knew that, there was no, two-way, redemption for me. So after that, then I came back, and I was in the hospital, and my mother, they found out, so they came. And after, they had to go, they put me through the striker bed. I lay there for a couple of hours, and the nurses would come and check my body for any bed sores, and then they would change. I couldn't do my bowel movement, I couldn't do it. Even the urinary, I couldn't do that. Everything was stopped. See, you see how and right from here. So they made. They rated to have very, very difficult cases, because I was supposed to be sent to New Zealand, or probably either Middlemore, maybe Srina in Hawaii, and my sisters, at the time, they all wanted me to be sent over, but I said to my mom, when the chief surgeon came to me saying, look, we're going to have you operated here, But, I was the first one, and I said, what other conditions? They said they wanted, me to sign, but I couldn't sign because I couldn't hold, because I was paralyzed. And so my mother, I had to explain to my mother. She had to sign, the operation. And I said, look, Mom, if God wants me to die, I will die. But if he wants me to live, then I will live. So sign him. But the chief surgeon explained to me that the chances for me, to live and pull through is very, very small. Because when you have, they have to maintain, to stabilize my whole body, But remember, when you go to the plane, if there are some shocks, and often you find a lot of turbulences, and that's it, small turbulence, shakes, and then my spinal, injury would be even cut, and that's it for me, So what's the point, And I said, okay, I will explain. So when I explained to them, it's fine. And, it took a long, it's almost a very long operation. And interestingly, because for them too, this was the first. I was like a kid. but one of the funny things about it, so when they rolled me down to the theater, where I was outside, and they put the medicine on me, so that I can, sleep unconscious that movie. And and I think after some time, they the nurses thought that I was already gone, I was already, but I was still hearing what they were, and I heard them saying, oh, they all felt sorry because they knew that I was going to die. And because I wasn't really, the effect of the medicine, the morphine was not yet fully, captivating. And then, so, but I couldn't, say anything. Those, were what, and I guess that was from the experience too of them, a lot of cases that came through, you either be paralyzed for life or, you end your journey there. So it was very, disheartening for me, to hear the murmur, that if and you know what they said, if I were to leave, I would be paralyzed for life. Wow. And but the chances are, I would be gone. And so, and then I was taken in, and then, I was knocked out. And so when I woke up after, many, many hours, and slowly, becoming to recover, and I was still on this striker bed, they come and turn me up, upside down, and I would do my readings, the nurses would come, a lot of my colleagues came with boots, so they would put the boots below the striker bed, and I would lie down like this. And after I read the, one page or two, and then I called, because I couldn't, just next thing. And then one day, my colleagues, my team, the team that I was playing for, they used to come, but at that time I wasn't really. And one of my colleagues asked me, he said, Wood, why did you cry? Was it painful when you got injured? I said, why are you asking that question? And I, they said, because we saw you tears, coming, I was, really crying, not, because there was no pain, once if you injured, if you got injured through a spinal injury, you don't feel anything, unlike, any other. So, for me, there was no pain except that I couldn't move. And so the tears, kept pouring down my eyes, and they said, they thought that it was painful. Yeah. And I had to explain to them, look, what really happened, because I am a son of a pastor, all what I have been taught, the upbringing, I just turned away from that. I took up, the mantle of the world, party and everything, that you do all, those sinful, and that's not good, But when that, incident happened, that was the first thing, I knew where I was going. I was going down, and so I made, I said that, prayer, and then asked God, and that's why I cried, because I knew where I was going. I was going the other direction, the other side of the river, and so my colleagues were, for all of a sudden they were silent. My rugby friends, because they're all in the same boat. And they say, oh, really? Yeah. You can brag about life, whatever, your money, your strength, the power and everything. But once life is about to snap away from you, that's it. There's nothing beyond that, nothing except Christ. Yeah, and then so the story, how, my recovery, it's a miracle, Mike, and I think, thank you for the program too, that it has given me, this opportunity, because I used to give this testimony in North America, a lot, they came, they come and I told them, look, I am a living proof of God's, Christ's mercy, and after that, I found my way back, all the way up to my PhD. In Canada and everything, and saw, what God, has done for me, and so for all of those who, who say all these negative things about you, Mike, and even myself, don't worry, we'll just leave them, and we can only hope that they will, take the good side, and be a witness, to us all. So I'm taking this time on, and it's because of the forgiveness, because of trying to reach out to our Prime Minister, and I've been there, Mike. I've been there, and I know what I'm talking about. I know, and God's grace of forgiveness is so good, The rest, the sky is the limit, and the heaven is open for all of them. Yeah, so that's my short.
Thank you for that, Professor. The very amazing story you just shared, and the privilege that you shared it on the program. Your story, and that's exactly the lesson that I'm explaining. That, people don't understand. We all go through these. We were all young. People don't know my story, and then they come online and they yap. I'm thinking to myself, to the Usos that are saying stuff about me. I think to myself, if I was in my time, if you said that to me, that's my type of personality as well. People forget that we went through the same stage, and then are waiting for the stage where they start to mature. And some of these people are old, some of these people are 40s and 50s, and they still haven't matured. And I'm thinking, oh man, I don't know, coming online and saying all this, we've been through it. Exactly what you said, Professor. And your story really points that out. People don't understand the past that people have gone through. And, I loved your story, what you said about God. God is for him to heal you for you're supposed to be disabled, paralyzed for the rest of your life. And, what a beautiful story, Professor.
Just, I was only in hospital for 7 to 8 months. It was so, the recovery, I couldn't believe. And then I wanted to go home. That was when I was slowly, after 6 to 7 months, because at that time, as I was in Ward 6, the nurses would come and feel, my bladder, because I couldn't, so to speak, I couldn't urinate, if you say so, because my spinal injury wasn't really recovered. But when it was finally healed, slowly healed, and the pain was so strong that even when I tried to do it myself, it was painful, And then from then, the doctors who come and see me every 2-3 months, they would come with that hammer, and they would come and bang my toes, and then see if there's a. So one morning they came, and then they were shocked that when they banged, and then they all my toes moved, and I could hear, and they said, they were excited. They said, wow. And they said, "Whoa, you're gonna live," But all of them, no one expected. So, and as a result, I wanted to leave the hospital so that I can, do my exercises. But then, when I left, the lead surgeon who was conducting the surgery, all calmed down. They had moved on, they had passed on. And I know what he said to me. He said, "Wood, you're one in a million." This is when I was, discharged, for only about 7 to 8 months. And I knew that. But he should have said to me it was a miracle. But, all of this experience, he didn't, experience anything like my case. But he said that I was one in a million. So rather than saying that it was a miracle, but he said that my case is very, very unique. But the background of that situation, my mother, my parents, my sisters, my family, and the Methodist community, clergies at the time, they were praying and fasting for me, and relatives. And so I was lying there wasted, Their prayers were, going nonstop to the throne of peace. And so God, granted me that second chance. So I made sure that I do it right. So after that, I see, the invisible hand of God, and then scholarship after scholarship, and the culmination is for me winning the Commonwealth Fellowship to do my PhD, my doctorate in economics in Canada. So, and that's another story too, because getting a PhD in those areas from those very top universities is something. But I knew it was God's hand. I had to believe in the blessing and work, and then everything. So that's the journey. It's just part of of that amazing born again experience that I had. And I'm sure our listeners too will will take this.
And Professor, because I have my own thinking. I think a lot of different, listen to different people talking about different things of life, and one of the things I kind of like to see, when we come to Earth and we, the life is a learning. It's like we come to learn what for us to learn about our anger issues, whether we have, the perspective. We can be on top of the world, just like yourself and many others. You feel like on top of the world, but then an incident like this takes place. It's almost like, what do you learn from this? And if you don't learn, what happens after that? Do we come back and learn again? Like, what's, a lot of these different questions I ask, and I love your story there. You obviously changed your life. Your mind and your mentality, as you said, was going to one way, and then obviously, to be in that scenario, maybe it was a life-changing scenario, I would imagine, for you. And then many people, to kind of wrap it up into politics. I hope that happens for the Prime Minister before this boomerang thing you say. If you don't learn your lesson, it will. I'm not sure what will happen next, but. I don't want it to happen for him, the Prime Minister, for him to go down that road. And I think this is what your message in your story is. Show, ask for forgiveness and humble yourself. Don't think we're on top of the world because you're the Prime Minister but come back down to the understanding and see people through the, for who they are, to Lepa and everyone else. Don't hold, that's why I love your story, Professor. I didn't know that. So I've learned something new from you. And I love your story. Thank you for sharing that, Professor. I don't know where to go from here. I didn't expect that kind of story.
This is one of the blessings of our program, your program, especially when we do it in English. At the same time, what I went through and God's grace upon humanity, I'm part of that, and I am a living testament of that. Like others, millions of others too, and we make sure, and I make sure that love, I have to reciprocate, that boomerang. I have to make sure that God, forgave me, and I accepted that, and I move on, and I become a witness. I become a witness. So wherever I go, we're not perfect. At times, but we still have that central message that we become witnesses, and that's the whole essence of the gospel. Before Christ ascended to heaven, he gave the greatest commission to his disciples: go and preach the good news to all the tongues. And then the end will come. So you don't necessarily have to go to a seminary, or a special, theological college. You may need that, because there's a lot of theological underpinnings that you need to understand, and history and everything. But the greatest gift is that relationship, between you and God, through the love of Christ. And part of my journey, when I was in my other degree in Hawaii, I kind of sidetracked, from even from the university, but then somehow I wanted to find that strength again. So I was driving around looking for a church. I just wanted to go to a Methodist church. So when I came to one of the small towns, there was this Methodist church, but there were two churches services. So I wanted to attend the English service, and the pastor is Japanese, Hawaiian Japanese, full committed. His name is Roy Saki. He's an evangelist, and just the Spirit just led me, And so, after sitting there in the service for the first time, since I was in university in Hawaii, I just couldn't find my way, to my studies, during my pre-med. But then I knew that something was not right, because, I kind of sidetracked, backtracked. So that service, I went in and sat at the end of the, the church, and pastor was giving a sermon, about forgiveness, and I knew it was me, I knew the Holy Spirit, inspired him to preach that, and it was for me, So then after that, he called the altar call, for all, whoever, wants, to be prayed upon, and then I stood up, I don't know, and I was sobbing, and then when the service was finished, I came out, the pastor and the wife, Japanese, Hawaiians, they invited me to their home. They continued, and when we went there, I told them, that I needed some peace, with my studies, I don't know. And then they, Mike, this is, true. They laid their hands on me, And not only that too, because at the time, that spirit of, like, smoking and all that, they just, prayed. And for the first time in my life, I felt that I was completely, spiritually healed. And I still have the Bible, the gifts from, Pastor Sutton. It was a gift that was given to him by the seminary. And amazingly, he was not a Christian, but he went to a Christian college. And he got his education there, and that it's there that he got inspired in the Holy Spirit, and that made him converted to become very strong. And he takes a lot of evangelical messages to Japan. But the story behind, he explained to me. He said, "Look, when my father found out that I was a Christian, his father just disowned him." Pastor, the father just said, "I've got nothing to do with your medical," because he wants him to go to medical school. So he was not going to pay for all of this, because he wanted to go to the seminary. And then he ended up. He went to the theological college, and to cut the story short, the whole of the family, including the father and the parents, are now full-time Christians. It's the mercy, and they are now doing a lot of evangelical work in Japan and other. But I still have the gift that he gave. That Bible. This is what. So that was my experience. That after what happened in the injury, and then after that led me to that born again experience. It changed my whole perspective, in life. And therefore, that's why it's important that whatever we have been blessed with, we make sure that others are also blessed with, and we become witnesses. You don't have to be a Catholic, you don't have to be a Protestant, you don't have to know. It's just part of, helping you, understanding. But you've got to have that relationship. And that's the experience that I have. So I come back, I'm still a Methodist. So, for me, my family, some I get very strong, even my children say, "Don't worry, that's fine with me." As long as, others are in other, denominations. So as long as you know your relationship with Christ.
Yes, that's right. That's
so
true.
the reason why is because of, that. Yeah.
Would you say?
So we can only hope. Families,
Yeah. Yes. I hope he, because as I said, we have I have nothing against the Prime Minister. A lot of people think that I have something against the Prime Minister. I think I don't want to end on anything else. I think this is enough for us for today. But the story, I like to. Do you feel, from your experience from this, did it change your perspective? Because I know a lot of people think in the world of what other people think. As you said, you're on top of, you think you're on top of the world. The girls and you just, you feel like you're somebody, and then you just get hit by this injury. Did you feel, was it a drastic wake up call? Would you say you were humbled, Professor? Would you think that was?
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, I was, because I felt this. That's what demarcates, living, and then on the other side, it's death or life. So while you are alive, you can feel all the pain, the suffering, and enjoy whatever, whatever life has offered you. But once that gift, remember, life, it's a gift from God. If we look into the story of creation, it's very clear that all of the creation, so to speak, was done through the spoken word. God said, "Live and let live." This not us, not us. No, He just called upon the personages, God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, to let us make man in our image. And after we were made from the dust, from the matter. This is now we understand this from physics. That when we look at space, it's time, space, and matter. When they say that this is it was because in the beginning, God, in the beginning is time, and we now discover it. In the beginning, time, God, the Spirit, made man, and man was made, from the earth, the elements of the earth, and then the space, we have the space there, and then in that case there, it's that gift because God Himself breath, He gave us the breath of life. All of the human, all of the animal kingdom, it's not like that. It's just the word, the spoken word, and then they live, and let live, be fruitful and multiply, but not us. So it's understanding that you look at, the soul, the spirit, and the body. Those things are very three. And out of all of those, the spirit, leads you direct to God. And the body, this is where matter is. If we look at science, because the body was made from matter. This is God's. When you die, it goes back to where it came from. And then the soul, which is a relationship, and nobody. So that spirit, when it goes back, because it's a property, it's God's property. Your life, my life, is not yours. This is something that we really have to understand. We live and enjoy, the blessings and everything, whether good or bad, But the life that you enjoy, whether it's it's a joyful life or a challenging life or whatever, it will go back to God. And it's interesting with technology and everything that we now have, we tend to be understanding more and more about that uniqueness, of God outside, of the real. And so that spirit, when it lives, like when you asked me whether I was really experiencing any brokenness, of course, because I was once that, strong, young man, who wants to enjoy, conquer the world, but you have to, we are only given it freedom, but freedom within the realms of God's purpose. We cannot, a lot, once freedom is given, then they can think, oh, I can accomplish anything. I can do things outside. No, there is, there has to be, a realm that we behave, and that means, that God's laws, and that cancer. So yes, that was my first encounter with death, very young. And I make sure that I won't go through that again, And I use that experience to reach out to others so that, for me, for my students, I always, give them a blessing when we finish, it's good, say God bless, and before the class, I pray for them at home, and then I come, and then so wherever I sit fit in the natural realm of the order of things, where I see fit, the relation directly with the hand of God, I just make reference, from that, because science has now proven that there is, of course, there is a God, And for those who say there is no God, like the atheists and others, the Bible is very clear that you are a fool. You are a fool. Because once that moment comes when God is taken from you, then what can you say? What are you going to say to God, to Christ when you go? Are you going to beg for another chance? No, there's no second chance. So we make the most, and we can reach out to our not just children, but our friends, families, and even our leaders. Even the church friends as well, the leaders too. So So
Very well said.
and for me as a lay preach, because that's one of I'm a lay preacher. I'm qualified, if we can use that term. I'm registered officially in the church, Methodist Church. So I am a currency, in terms of being accepted through the protocols of the church. So I can preach from Sunday, some Sundays, and to share, what God has given me, what God has stored for me.
The Methodist churches are very, here in Sydney, I admire the Methodist Church. They have done a great job in, when I see, the FRKSA is a massive church, how they are. I love how the FRKSA and the Methodists. I look up to the Methodists a lot because I've been to a few of their functions, and they just, they really do a good job in combining the Samoan and in church into one, intertwined into one. And I think I look up to how these churches like the Methodists and the Lamosa continue, because if it wasn't for the church, Professor, our history would would be gone. A lot of the history of our Samoan, practices, it's from the church, and that's another thing that the churches are blessed to have the history and the for this institution to still continue today.
Well, we can only imagine what could have, what pathway, we could have taken if it wasn't for the church. But I'm always proud as a Samoan because of that special moment in time, in history, when the Holy Spirit decided that would intervene through the warrior, goddess, Lafenua. And she would give the right prophecy for the arrival of the kingdom. So Christ knew it, that's more than 2,000 years ago. And he knew it. When you look at the Middle East, he knew that some of his children, live where we are at the moment because we are the closest to the South Pole. And Christ knew that. So that's why Nakanoa was installed. And it came, some years after that. And the candle is still burning, and burning very, very, because not just the congregation and method, even the Catholic Church and other, denominations as well. So wherever Samoans go, we go to New Zealand, Australia, even other places, even Alaska, you'd be surprised. Yeah. Some of the newly established churches, they're Methodist congregation. In Alaska, very cold, far up in the northern hemisphere, the Arctic, but they still are taking their what God, has given us, and they are proud, and they will die for it too. So, and we should be very thankful when we are blessed, not just, and even the Pacific, and other brothers and sisters. You are now seeing that there is a huge turmoil now in Europe about Islam, Islam, and even it's now, I think Australia is also, shaky about it. New Zealand, but I think New Zealand Christianity is very, very, even in Australia, it's probably still more than half of the population are Christians. But I think with what has been happening lately through those and even the war in Iran, you'll find that there will be a new twilight, a new twilight for the gospel, because even in Iran alone, the growth of underground Christian churches is very, very strong, and even in China, amazing. I was just there was I was looking into one of the stories of Christianity in Japan. Remember, Japan was Christianity was brought in by Catholic, into the south. But over the years, some of the samurai, particularly the shogun, they decided to ban Christianity, and amazingly, when you look at the history and how the followers of Christ were executed, but more than 200 years, it's still. So when I was doing this, I couldn't believe, because now it's the restructuring of the growth of Christianity in Japan. And Catholic Church is really growing strongly. And that's something, even when you look at North Korea too, it was once it's a place where Christianity, but because of communism, atheism and all those ideas. But now with the South, adopting more and more Christianity now spreading, it's, you feel the spirit moving. And I think, and in that note, and using our program too, rather than going out to evangelize, we're doing part of our job to be, the word, because it's a platform, So whoever gets the message through our, your program, may God be blessed, in that case, yeah. I think on that note,
thank you, Professor. Yeah, we'll end on that note. The war in overseas, it's a big topic, and I hope it doesn't get out of hand, because we could be a Muslim and a Christian. At the end of the day, if you look at the true teachings from both religions, we should never ever be in a mess. That's why I say, with the politics and even the lessons happening in Samoa, when you politicize something, you can turn religion into something where, you've missed the whole meaning of the teachings that are in each of these religions. I'm thinking, if each of these gods came down now, I'm thinking, what would their move be if they were the leaders of the country? But it comes back to myself. It comes back to being politicizing these type of topics. It should not be politicized. But I'm not sure if you heard about the changing of the. To me, I feel if the news that was coming out, some people so that I'm sure you heard of the Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz that's coming out of Iran. That the ships coming past Iran, no one's allowed to go past, which is why I think they're fighting over this war. And when I heard that Iran is only allowing ships that are paying for the barrels in yuan, in Chinese currency, that's a big move right there. This is where I'm talking about. I don't think, to me, myself, it's not a Christian versus Muslim. It's economics. This is why, this is your field, Professor. It's all about the trading war.
Since the United States is a superpower, and trade has been dictated through that, and then China popped up. Russia was there, but not as strong as Soviet Union. Then we have the EU as well, but EU is made of many, fractions of European. So it's difficult to really come in unison with something to do, like what we're seeing now, But having said that, the PRIC, you've heard of the PRIC. This is an organization that was set up by Iran, Russia, China, Brazil,
Brazil, yeah.
and even South Africa. All of those countries, those are the ones, and others, who really want to topple the US dollar. But under the Bretton Woods agreement, this is after World War II. This is where IMF and World Bank and UN were born out of. And that has been able to hold the stability of trade. But then other countries feel that United States has been politicizing, the dollar, as much, which is of course, because if United States feel that this nation is not doing as, then they would say, okay, they will deal with it with trades and all of that. But hey, as long as you do it in the right way, because development will always be part, and whoever is at the realm, will have to control. But I tell you what, under the BRICS, those countries who founded the BRICS, they know that there is no currency that the world would be, under the dominion of the BRICS, because they're all different. And what they have found out is that what lies beneath that is the slipping track on China. China, is really, the main arch rival of the United States, but later on Russia. But I believe what is missing in China is the gospel. And whoever wants to topple the United States at the moment, I don't think, because the leaders of the current administration now, United States administration is now reaffirming the foundation of the United States through Christ. And that is a bold, statement like their forefathers did. And once you, hold on to that, who will be against you? That's what, Paul says, if God is with you, who can be against you?
That's right.
And that is exactly what I'm saying now. So it comes back. So for the Hormuz, the Hormuz Strait, it's the only ace that Iran, has been holding very dear to, but it's not a problem, because the United States is not affected by that. Because the United States is self-sufficient with, oil supply and everything.
That's right.
And even in Alaska, there is more oil there, but it has not been traded. And even inside the United States, and so they also have Canada a lot of oil. But any decentralization of the market, the stock market, since other countries trade using the dollar, there is now a push to trade with the yuan, the Chinese. My only take on that, if China was genuine and honest about the real value of the Chinese yuan, then there's nothing wrong. They did compete with the US and the euro, and others. But I don't think that's the case. They because it's still a communist country, adopting democratic and the free market ideas, and the government controls that. So you cannot trust that. You cannot allow the market. So because if you have your hand there to protect the fluctuation or even the strength of the yuan or any other currency, it's not good. But if you trade, I explained this before. Like two systems. One is the flexible regime. That means you allow your currency to be traded through the demand, the supply and demand. If you trade more goods and services to other countries, then the demand for your currency will go up, and the other way around as well. So that is the flexible regime, and that determines the real value of your currency based on the basket, the currencies and the basket of currencies there, just like the inflation, And then one of the regime is the fixed exchange rate, where the Federal Reserves and central banks, they kind of put a control to the real value. And that means they have to select certain trading partners, and then the average weight of those trading partners, the dollar, that's where your dollar, the value of your dollar would be decided against. And often you are protected from any fluctuation, going up, because if other currencies go down, you're still safe from the value of other currencies. But if you let your currency compete in the global market, like the Australian, the New Zealand, and that is where you will know exactly how good your economy is. That's why you look at, at the end of every news you see the trade value, because if the dollar goes down, then that means the demand also falls as well. If it goes up, it means you export more, and other trades of the value. Because when you trade using those dollar exchanges. So the exchange using the yuan, it's still debate, but for me, it's just temporary. Because Iran is now using that as a tool to get back to the United States, but it's not a problem. The United States, because now I think there are probably about 6 or 7 countries now who are now coming on board to send their frigates, some of the warships to help out with Hormuz, with some of them. NATO, didn't really support that, but eventually they will come, because if United says, okay, then we'll let it close. The United States is self-sufficient, no, but for them, they depend on
Professor.
It's a strategic economic move for the leaders, and I know there's a lot of debate when you look at it from the economics viewpoint. You look at all the pros and cons, and then you laugh.
You can see the map more clearer. Professor, just because we're talking on this topic, because I had important questions here about the economics and your perspective, because this is why, Professor, your story, I hope you're going to be contesting in the next election, because we need your mind in economics. The more I talk to you, I want to kind of, because there's a lot what you just said there in the last 2 sentences, for myself as well. So I can only imagine what other people are thinking. But I feel like to try and make it as simple as I can so people can all understand how your mind functions, because it's very important for us to know this type of stuff, because then you can see the bigger picture, how much economics plays in the world that we live around us. But my story asks, just coming back to Samoa, because the 405A, a lot of the people are saying, a lot of the people are talking about the 405A and the money that's been pushed out, and there a lot of them say, Tulepa is not part of, Tulepa didn't give the money out in his time, right? And fair point for these people that are saying this type of stuff. But because of your economics background, is it important what Tulepa has done to set up the money, so the framework that has been pushed in Samoa we see today? If it wasn't done properly on how HRPP have put it together, would we have the benefits? Would this affect the money that's coming in at the moment, or would we have the money either way? I just wanted to know and clarify so people can understand, because to people's opinions, they just think Tulepa and HRPP have just come in and they've just come and just done the job, and they've never given money out to the people. And I also want to voice up that you and the Tautua Party was the one that was responsible for this project in the first place, which was taken from the fast. But can you just talk us in a little bit before, this is one of the questions I forgot because we went a little bit off, but can you just clarify this? How important is the economics framework that was instilled? Is it important? Maybe it's not. Please, Professor.
Well, the reason why we put that in our manifesto, we felt that the ownership, we're looking at the ownership, the ownership has to be in the hands of the districts, That means a responsibility, and it comes with the stewardship of the funds. We did not anticipate that it would end up like the way, it's now going. Remember I said earlier, my greatest fear is that this would become a long-term welfare,
Yeah.
and that's the way I see it is now. It needs to be administered properly, by an administration which is it was under the Ministry of Women, and not only that, too, the finance, Ministry of Finance is always there. But the way things are, there is now a new body that is slowly being put together to oversee all, because there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money involved. A lot of money. So I don't expect any physical benefits of the project in the next, I would say, 3 or maybe this, towards the end of this 5 year. Because once you need to have all of these institutionalized positions, the management, and then you make sure that you disperse the funds. And I also saw the list of projects that were, let's say, accepted under this, that's from the bill. And I said, my gosh, I hope, that this would end up as we anticipated, and since this, from the last 4 years, nothing really happened, except that money was given out to. And now, now with the second fast now, and again, it's the same thing too. People are now talking about this quick, the quick fix, for the first time that they have now been given all these 150 tala, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And this is part of trying to transfer. Remember, this is a transfer of wealth. You're transferring the wealth from the coffin, from the national, budget to them through whatever, quick fix solution, they put forward, like the 150 Salah. But they still have to fulfill some of the major obligations that were given to the public under, during the campaign period. So that still hasn't come forward. But in saying that, if there is no firm structural human resource facility in place, it's going to fail. It is going to fail because corruption is very, very easily, tempered. And you can see that in this kind of.
Professor, what do you
But
mean?
it's.
Professor, sorry, what do you mean by that? Like just that little part you said. So if we don't have, you're saying if we don't have a system in place or a development, is that what you're saying? Just for
Yeah, because at the moment they have they started from the Committee like the last government, FMA. And then they put in the chair, and other administrative positions here. So, and we hope that those were settled from there. But it now appears that there are other layers of, workers that are involved and how the funds are being distributed through whatever signatures that they have, from the chair and it. I can't see at the moment. I am not really convinced that that this would be positively reflected on any change. Sometimes in the near future, probably 1 or 2 years. That whatever if the next financial year would be July. The next budget will come in. So hopefully by then, the Fono Fa'avai. The Fono Fa'avai should have all of their developmental projects in there. And if when they come to the treasury, because the treasury they are the ones who design the budget. So Fonfavaya is not exempted from it. You know what I mean? Fonfavaya is just like another ministry, this is, but it has to be under whatever, At the moment it's under the Ministry of Women, but it has to be another institution. So once that institution will come direct to the treasury,
And
what I mean?
Yes, and the impacts on that, Professor, right there, what you're saying there, would it be an impact? Because what I'm trying to get at is when, I know the audit reports, we haven't been getting much audit reports to make a judgment on things, right? But just say July comes, when are we in a danger zone? Or are we already in the danger zone from your analysis? Because I know you don't have the paperwork to analyze, but when are we in the danger zone, or are we in the danger zone, Professor?
Yeah, this is, we only have about three months left now, 3 months left. And I don't know how the budget is being prepared. I haven't checked with some of my colleagues, at Treasury, because but that's a good question. I need to find that out especially for my classes. So, in other words, this has to be set up now. So, in the disbursement of those funds, since if it's not ready under the proposed infrastructure, then that means it has to be dispersed under the current infrastructure, which is under the Ministry of Women, and that would be directly linked to overseen by Treasury, If that's the way I see things, because this is only 3 months. But if comes the budget and that has been taken care of, that would be interesting, and that would be a good point of debate inside because now we're going to look at the change in the Constitution, and therefore it has to have at least two-thirds to change the Constitution to establish a new infrastructural body to oversee all of this. That means it would be out of the jurisdiction of the current Ministry Women. I don't think it will happen in the 3 months. So it's most likely it will go as it is under the Ministry of Women, and as the next financial year, we will see how that, with this new proposal underway. And I support having it under a new structured institution, because it's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And that's a lot of money, and that's why but the whole idea, Mike, was to make sure that the ownership of these projects go back. There's not that much difference, because under the former leadership of HRBP, funding was still there, but funding was dispersed from the Ministry of Women. So if there are any development projects that that districts, there is a process, and then, they move forward, and then, it's there, but the control, this is the word, but the control of the funding has to be very, very strict. You cannot just, because this is a lot of money, and we also have to make sure that the red tape, red tape thing, because it becomes an impediment to the whole purpose of trying to promote growth. So you want to cut down on that propaganda, that red tape, and then allow quick disbursements of the funds with the stakeholders to be well informed of their responsibilities. That means the ENFA, the districts where the recipients of the funds. This is not welfare, but the way things are going. That's how it is.
Yeah, definitely looks like it online.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. I want to leave it at that, because it's been a long time, and But I really appreciate this time that you've given us, the stories. Next week I want to really hit this part, because coming back to it, numbers, it really gives us a good insight on how well we're going. The numbers don't lie. They teach us how we're really going in Samoa, is how Samoa is doing really. So hopefully I'll do a little bit of research myself and Professor, because if we can get these figures, we can see whether the fast are doing really well and whether they're not doing so well. So thank you.
The figures, look at the central banks. They have latest reviews and also statistics, and then we can discuss from there, and then, whether we can agree on those figures, because sometimes,
Thank you.
Sometimes, but the way things are at the moment, I think the economy is being driven through expenditure, expenditure. And if you can understand what I mean, so there are only two ways of, promoting wealth. You can either do it by expenditure function, increasing the expenditure function, or increase the revenue function. So either one of those, or you go, mix, half. But the way I see things, I think it's leaning more towards the expenditure function. We can hope that creation of work will come along, And but there are, studies. A lot of studies have already been done on those, the pros and cons. We can talk about those. But a lot, as we see the real figures come out. But there should be some new change in the GDP. We've just opened 30, plus million development project, and the parliamentary project is going, and hopefully many more to come. But not the way the disbursement of the funds, get out of it.
That's it.
Anyway,
thank you, Professor, for your time. I'll let you have the last word there.
Thank you very much. I also would like to take this final opportunity to extend my sincere appreciation for to our listeners. I hope that what we have shared, not just only from my personal life experience, but also what is happening in Samoa and around you. So we try to keep our arguments along the middle of the road, so that we make sure that everybody is being informed, objectively in that sense there. And on that note, be a witness of God's grace. Okay?
Thank you,
Professor.
Thank you.
God bless.
God bless. Have a good weekend. Guys, we'll be back in a short break. And we'll be back. Thank you, guys.
Hear these praises from a grateful heart. Each time I think of you, the praises start. Love you so much, Jesus. Love you so much. Lord, I love you. My soul sings here in your presence, carried on your wings. Love you so start. Love you so much, my Jesus. Jesus, love you so much. Lord, I love you. Lord, I love you. My soul sings here in your presence, carried on your wings. Love you so much, my Jesus. Jesus, love you so much. How my soul longs for you, longs to worship you forever in your power and majesty. I lift my hands, I lift my hands, I lift my heart. I lift my heart, I lift my voice towards the heavens, for you are my sun and shield. I lift my hands, I lift my hands, I lift my heart, I lift my voice towards the heavens, for you are my sun and shield. I lift my hands, I lift my hands, I lift my heart, I lift my voice towards the heavens, for you are my sun and shield. Hear these praises from a grateful heart. Each time I think of you, the praises start. Love you so much, my Jesus. Jesus, love you so much. Lord, I love you. Lord, I love you. My soul sings here in your presence, carried on your wings. Love you so much, my Jesus. Jesus, love you so much. I love you so much. Love you so much. Jesus, love you so much.
Thank you, guys. Whoever's still around, it's a long show today, and I appreciate the patience, and I appreciate Professor for sharing his, sharing his time with us. Also sharing his story, his testimony, as he said. It's good that we tell these stories of someone with his background. I truly appreciate his time that he gives us for this show so we can get a better understanding. I appreciate the support that's coming in from everywhere. Thank you guys for tuning in and sharing your positive comments and also your negative comments. We appreciate the effort and time that you guys put into those comments. But just to recap, on today, next week we are going to hit more on the economics because the numbers need to be pushed out to the public so we can all know the true numbers on what's happening, what they are not doing. We already know that they're not, the government of Samoa, they're not releasing audit reports. There's no audit reports coming out, which is a big concern because, we need the reports to kind of tell us where's the money going. Where's all this cash money going? And so that's a massive concern that we need to kind of be aware of. I wanted to hit on today. I wanted to talk about during the week. I had a little listen to what was happening with the other medias. I had a listen to the Blue TV, to Asiata, and I tuned in. And as I tuned in, they were talking about Lealapule and the case, and the court case, and they were mentioning things like implying that Lealapule is the person responsible behind this case, and they were talking about the court case, of Sam and the other five, which is involving the Prime Minister himself. And I just thought to myself, these guys, the way they talk, and being in front of media, thousands of people tuning in live. And so I tuned in at this time and they were talking about the case, the court case that was happening for Friday. So this was on Thursday. And they were saying, they mentioned Lealapule, really implying that Lealapule is the one behind this all. I thought to myself, these guys have no understanding about what you can say online and what you can say out on the air when thousands of people are listening. And I want to just say to everyone, that's defamation. You can't just say to someone, you can't say that, just say Lealapule because Sam said he is the witness. You cannot repeat that online and say that to the whole thousands of people that are listening that this person is the murderer. That's defamation towards that man's name. And this is how I look at it, and I'm thinking, this is the bad politics that I look at these media that are doing towards the HRPP, because Lealapule is in the HRPP. It's politics that I disagree with what's happening with the medias that are trying to politicize, as well as Lauli, but even with Blue TV, they're politicizing this. They're just saying it out loud what they think about who the person is responsible for this. Even though it's in front of the courts, even though that person's not even in this court case, he's not a part of this court case. He's not being judged for this court case. So for them to share to the thousands of people that Lealapule, the HRPP member, is responsible, that's defamatory. You can't do that because that's damaging to someone's name. I'm surprised these guys haven't been sued yet. But they're probably getting away because of the Samoan language barrier. But if you said that in English, you got to get sued. You can't just say that. Who knows? I heard that they're waiting for this case to happen for the media to get sued for this case, because what's happening now and what they're doing to the people that are tuning in, that's bad. That's really bad for bad manners, if you want to talk about in media terms, and especially these guys who are top of the chain. For you guys to politicize all of this game of the HRPP versus FAST, I believe that you guys are the real issues. You guys are the real issues because you guys come out and you say things that are not true, things that are not verified, and then you expect everyone to repeat your words. And then they come and repeat it to other people who are against the government. They come back and fight with the HRPP because of your words. That's what the damages of you saying defamation about someone else. And you got to get, these guys have got to get sued for it. Both of these radio presenters, you got to get sued. You can't do that. And this is how some of the things, because I look at this radio station. As I said, I support these guys. I support Samoan talent. I want our Samoans to do the best they can, and I love how they got thousands of people, and I love how they're dominant in this sector. I don't know if there's any other Polynesian radio station that's doing something like this online as big as these guys. So I'm proud. These guys are funny. I laugh as well with some of the stuff that they say. I mean, people think that I'm a hater. I enjoy these guys, the show, the way that they talk back. They're funny. The way they, you hear the stories that people listening to them every day, and going to work, coming back from work, or, wherever they are around the world. That's good. I support that. And I love that. To hear the Samoan language, it helps them get through the day. I have nothing against what those guys are doing for the community. But one thing I do have against is lies. I'm going to come for you if you lie. I mean, that's the only reason why I will come and put my 2 cents in, is because of the lies. It doesn't matter what you guys try and attack me on the side, it doesn't faze me at all. But you, Blue TV, the lies of you talking about Lealapule and HRPP and talking down about them and talking lies and using your advantage of the thousands of people that tune into you, using that to repeat ideologies that they go and carry around. And so they carry that around with them, and then they repeat it to all the HRPP people, and then this is real clash of Samoans. So where does the issue come from? You guys. It comes from you, Blue TV. That's where the issue comes from. And, I don't know if anyone else is calling it out, but I'm definitely calling it out. It's affecting our people to another level. And look, if you think that I'm just these guys are okay, there's nothing wrong with what they are doing. The question is, right, why haven't they gone to Samoa? Why haven't these guys gone to Samoa? This is the big question that you guys don't understand. You guys are being charmed by what they're saying and all the stories, which is good. The funny stories and the banter, I love it. But the question is, they're talking about politics here. Why haven't these guys gone to Samoa? That's the question, guys. And then so everyone's saying, your parents, you guys are in a court case. That court case, right? There's another story to that court case you guys don't know about. And then, so what I'm trying to say to you guys is, my parents went to Samoa. Even with the FAST government still in there, they went to Samoa. They faced the music. And then somehow, no one in Samoa charged them. Guess who charged them? Blue TV, Asiata charged my parents. Asiata charged my parents. What does that got to show? What does that got to say about what's truly happening in this political realm? Just let that like for you guys to understand. So my parents go to Samoa, you know, because a lot of people saying they said all these bad things against the government and all that stuff. Again, they're not saying bad things. They're saying the truth. They're saying just the truth because no one else wants to talk about it, right? So they said all this stuff on a radio station, on their radio platform, and I was the producer for them. So this is why I'm called Producer Mike. And so they go to Samoa, and then Asiata, somehow, from New Zealand, like get this guys, this is how you know there's corruption in the game here. Somehow, my parents go to Samoa, and then they get charged for defamation. They get charged for this defamation for something that was said online. Here in Australia, they get charged from it, but the person who's charging them from, the person who's making the charge is from New Zealand, from this Asiata guy. I mean, so hold up. Asiata is in New Zealand, he stays in New Zealand, and then he somehow has the power to pass something through to whoever the prosecutor or whoever passed the court case who are defending him. I think it's the police are defending this guy on air and saying, have passed Asiata's case to say something was said against him. So my parents are in Australia, Asiaka is in New Zealand, and he gets charged in Samoa. Let me repeat that again. My parents say something here in Australia online, and then they go to Samoa. Asiaka somehow gets in to make a court case against my parents for something they said here in Australia. While he sits in New Zealand, and they're still waiting for him to come to Samoa. No one's seen him to come to Samoa. And I'm thinking, whoa, why don't, hey, you've done a great job for FAST. You're pretty much one of the main reasons why everyone believes the FAST is the glorious party that they say they are. Why can't you go to Samoa, Asiaka? Why can't you go? Even the co-host. Why can't you two go to Samoa? And I think for you guys to understand, you know the reason why he can't go to Samoa. It's corrupt. What he knows he's done is corrupt. This is all corrupt. What the whole thing that they're pushing out in the politicized, the stuff that he's talking about when it comes to politics, it's corrupt. The defamation that they're saying, that's one side of the story. But the stories that they're pulling out to the people, and the thousands of people are listening, they know in their hearts it's wrong stories. Blue TV and what they're doing, they know in their hearts it's the wrong way that they went. And this is the reason why Asiata and them don't go to Samoa. Purely because they know they'll be charged. You can make all the excuses to say, oh, the police are against you, they're corrupt and all that stuff, but really, guys, it's you guys. You guys are the issues. You guys started this whole mess that we see, HRPP versus FAST. You know, this is what I'm pointing out. So as long as I just wanted to make it clear, that's what the court case is all about. My parents have to sit on the sidelines now. They don't, a lot of people they enjoy watching their show. You know, some people, they don't enjoy it, so that's good. But them, they have to sit on the side. You know why? Because they listen to the law. They go to Samoa and they listen to even though this whole case is all BS. The whole case is BS. But they still follow the law. Even though they're looking at who the hell signed this and passed this? Who was the person that signed it to pass it to the courts? Who? I don't know. It will be very interesting to see. Who was it? Who had the power to allow Asiata in New Zealand to cut, the guy, sweet, let me sign it down here, no worries, he's got a case. Yep, he hasn't even stepped into Samoa to make the case. Is that corrupt, guys? That's corrupt, guys. You know it's corrupt. And Asiaka, you know it's corrupt. You know, this whole court case and people saying, oh, the court case, your parents and all this stuff. Yeah, you didn't know that, eh? You didn't know the whole court case. How can a jurisdiction in Australia, you say something in Australia and then you go to Samoa, you get charged by someone in another country? Wow. That's power, guys. And that's corruption. That's corruption. So all you guys talking to me and say, your parents are, this, and, you guys you're just like your parents. Nah. These guys have been playing the rules. So they have to sit out. Of course they want to come on and still do their show. But they do, you know why they don't do it? They follow the rules. They follow the rules. And I really hope, whatever the court case for Laoli and this, whatever takes place, I hope you guys follow the rules. Because this is what I'm trying to say. All you guys talking about my parents and all that stuff, you guys don't know anything. So don't listen to what other people are trying to say, because there's another side of the story. But as I said, guys, I was looking a little bit into the Asiaka stuff, and I'm thinking, man, apart from everything else, I have nothing against Asiaka. I have nothing bad to say about the only thing I hate is the lies. That's the only thing I disagree on. It's the lies. And I have fun with the comments. A lot of the comments saying to us, you're sore loser. HLPP are sore losers. HLPP are not. This is not about sore. This is not about losers. When I put up these videos, like I did a video yesterday about the generator and the fridge. This exposed Laoli about his the works that he's done behind. It questioned his integrity, because it really did. They did a report on Laoli to see if your generator a better price. They found out he did, works behind the scenes. In other words, paying off someone to kind of get a better price on his generator. Right? And that's what he got busted for. So if he got busted for that, there's many stories that Tuleapa has not said. And I'm going to bring it. I'm going to continue to bring it. To all you guys trying to say, just give it a rest. No, I'm not going to give it a rest. If you want me to give it a rest, you tell Blue TV and all you media in the fast, you give it a rest. You guys think you guys can come in here and kick someone on the floor, all of you guys, gang up on the HRPP, and you think no one's got to come and help him, and you guys are trying to tell me to give a rest. You give it a rest. Because there's so much to HRPP that I'm just going to keep rolling out. I'm going to keep rolling it out, not because I'm bitter against you guys, it's because I hate bullies. You guys are absolutely bullying these guys. And this is how stupid the people are who are thinking they're great, they're doing the job. When someone's in a scrap, they're having a fight with someone, and then those people that grab people and they push them in and they just kind of rile that crowd up. These people that share my show, right, towards your fast pages, you're that. That's what you guys are. You guys that come in and think that you guys are doing a great duty to your supporters of fasts. You come and go, share this, and then so you guys put me into that arena, and then you think that everyone commenting all these bad stuff is going to affect me. It doesn't affect me. But I just want to expose you guys. You guys are the problem. But at the same time, I'm blessed because you guys are doing the work for me. If you guys are smart, you guys don't share my stuff. You just keep me quiet. If you guys are smart. But you guys are not smart. You guys share me to here, share me to there, share me. You don't even realize that the people that you're sharing to, half of them people are going, it's got a point there. And you guys, you admins that think that you guys are on top of the world, thinking that you guys are doing a favor for Laoli and the fast party and your pledge. You guys are actually doing me a favor. Did you ever think about that? So yes, keep sharing, please. Keep sharing it. I just don't know how more dumb you can be to share my video out. I really don't understand how more. I don't know. You guys must walk around thinking, oh man, I'm doing such a great job for the Red Army. You missed the point, mate. And this is not for HRPP. I keep on telling you. This is for Samoa. And you guys think, oh, I mean, I'm all good. We've got majority, we've got people walking around, I'm so this and I'm so that. Let me share this so then all these people can say blah, blah, blah. But in real life, all you guys are little mouse. You guys are little mouses. That's it. All you guys got the biggest mouth online. In real life, you're the smallest little mouse. Hey, you guys think you guys got something tough. You guys are tough behind private pages, behind, you say all these tough words. You say, oh, this stuff, I'm going to come and do this. And shut up. Hey, you're not fooling anyone, mate. You think someone's just going to just take your stuff like online. And that's why I take the advice of people. Just, it is, people saying all this stuff against me. It doesn't faze me, guys. It doesn't faze me, and I support. Keep sharing my stuff, guys, because it doesn't faze me at all. But I just wanted to share with you that with the Asiata thingy. I've got nothing against Asiata and them personally, but one thing I do want to voice up, as I dislike liars. I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call out the lies that you guys are sharing online. So that's the lie. You guys are lying about my parents. You're lying about Lealapule and the HRPP. See, all these topics, it's all politics, it's all politicized. Where's your Samoan for Samoa? Why don't you keep talking about Samoa for Samoa? Why don't you go help Anai there? You guys got the power to help Anai pass the visa thing. Yeah, you either spend your time talking about the HRPP, you'd start, do something for Samoa if you guys really care. You guys got the power. Go to help Anai and other leaders there. Go make it very known to everyone to say, Samoa, we need to be respected here. But you guys are sitting here just defaming everyone, and then you guys can't even go to Samoa. You can't even go to Samoa. And that's the reality, guys. That's the reality. And that's how you know these guys are just spitting whatever they're saying online. And even though the FAST government have won, they still cannot go into Samoa. Why? Because they know in their heart what they've said is wrong. That's why. Even against my parents. And my parents, they go to Samoa. And then what happens? Right? They get charged for some BS thing because someone gave them the pass and said, oh yeah, we'll take Asiakas. Who the hell has that power? Who has that power? Someone from New Zealand, and we're from Australia, says something in Australia and comes to Samoa, and then somehow gets charged from someone in New Zealand. That's the reality, guys, eh? You didn't know that, eh? You guys didn't know about that story. And there's a lot more. And all you guys trying to tell me, like, that's enough. No, I'm not resting. I'm not resting until, because this is why I talk about, I try and give a chance to the FAST and to the Prime Minister. Have some forgiveness in your heart. Show some love. You're the one that's politicizing in your media. Your media people are politicizing all of this. If you want me to stop, you tell the media to stop. You stop, Prime Minister. Because I know I'm not doing this out of bitterness. I'm doing this because the truth. If it hurts, because the truth hurts. I'm not doing this. Why? Like the story of the generator. How many people didn't know about that? How many years people didn't know about that generator story? How many? But now they're starting to know. How many years we talk about John Campbell and everyone putting dirt on him, and now we know Tulepa's side. How many years? There's a lot more. This is why you guys saying this, they're saying, oh, just give it a rest, go do something else. If you guys want to tell me to give it a rest, tell Blue TV, tell all these media from America and all, the ones that are spreading this political BS, you tell them to stop. Because the only way I'm going to stop. Because at the same time, I have respect, but you guys are forcing my hand. Because how can you kick HRBP and then everyone thinks that a certain narrative? No, I'm not going to take that. That's bullying. So it's not because I'm trying to bring it up for HRBP. No one's bringing it up. No one's helping. You guys are just absolutely just making it blue versus red, blue versus red. No, guys. Where's the Samoa for Samoa? That's my message that I had for today, guys. And you know that they started talking about the rugby. I listened in more about the Asiata. They started talking about rugby. They started talking about the rugby union. Then they started bringing out names of people who would be best for the board. They started saying stuff like, you know, this name and that, Faftai should be on this, take this position, this, that. I'm thinking, this is what my thought process, because they're talking about the 150 million from Australia. Then I'm thinking, how can you talk about trying to fix rugby Samoa when you can't even fix the Samoan government? Like, how the hell does that make logical sense? You guys can't even fix up airlines. You guys can't even you cancel your boat project. There's no new developments. And you guys are handing out cash, right? Which is good, right? But you guys are handing out cash pretty much, in my mind, that you're buying votes for the Samoan people. You guys have got shortages in your medicine shortages. You guys have got damages in buildings. You've got holes in the wall. And then you've got power outages. Power outages. Samoa is suffering from power outages. And this is how you can see in the media how BS their politics is. Oh, we should get Tulepa out, HRPP, they should all get out. Give it a rest, give it a rest. Bring some new faces in, bring some new people in to come and, you know, there's some heaps, all of these players. You guys are saying that. The same people and the same people that supported the government that's literally can't even get an airplane for us. That has power outages. Guys, Samoa is suffering from power outages. And you guys are complaining about, oh, we should get this person, we should get rid of HRPP. Politics, guys. I mean, where's the logic? I'm trying to understand the logic behind what you're saying. Common sense, the logic. Fair enough if it's fair, like, you know, fair enough you got an argument. You guys don't have an argument. I already had the video out there about rugby union. And then talking about the people, talking about what Samoan rugby union have to deal with, the good governance to having to put the money here, there, here, and there. For them to even get on our rugby board, I 100% guarantee you, Asiaka, and you guys' opinion of trying to get players is the solution. I 100% guarantee that's not the solution. How can you blame the admin for whatever they got? How can you blame them for the performance of the players that are playing on the field? This is how arrogant our people have become. They forget to be grateful for where we come from, the cards that we've been played. And you guys just come in here and you say, we should bring this man Faftai, we should bring that guy here, we should bring that guy. There's heaps of people that can do the job. Really? Yep, power outages. Are you guys all right in the are you guys all right in the mentality? Guys, I don't mean to laugh about it because it's sad what's happening, but I laugh because it's just so much BS. I cannot believe how much BS and how people eat it all up. And then they come and argue with us and argue with all the other people. You know, I have people messaging me as well, and this is how I have respect for the Samoan people. Some of these people, they're in the public eye, and they come and swear at me. They come and say, and they come and say stuff that is just so like, whoa. And I'm trying to like show my respect and tell them like my side of the story. These guys, whatever. You guys are blah, blah, blah. Your parents are this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, if I showed everyone your messages, how shameful that you are. But I have honor for you. But how shameful that that you come and message that to me, even though I'm showing you my heart, I'm showing you everything. Nah, you guys don't. What the? You and your parents and blah blah blah. Go do a real job. Go do it. You know, I'm sure a lot of people will be interested. It will affect your work. 100% it will affect your work. But you know, I always have that heart for Samoa. One day we can probably see eye to eye. You know, so you know, I know in his heart he means well. You know, I know somewhere in his heart he means well. And he's angry. He's probably angry about all the BS that's been told about him, about the government and about Tulepa and all that stuff. You know, so that's why I have leniency with these people. Even my haters, deep down, they're not my haters, you know, they're not my enemy. We're Samoa for Samoa. But, you know, I just, again, my intentions is not to offend anyone. It's just to speak the truth. And if it affects you, wow, truth hurts. Anyways, guys, that's it for today's show. And have you guys have a good weekend. And you guys have a blessed weekend. And we got a show tomorrow with the opposition leader, Tulepa. So I'll see you guys then. God bless, guys.
Uai no mawhaiwa Se